Okay, the other day we were talking about notation of like f of x, and we kind of got hung up on there, and I kind of threw out something in terms of what I've seen, but I think it's hard to hear it audibly versus visually, so I thought I'd make a quick video of what I was talking about to make myself a little bit more clear. So what I learned on how to use this in my algebra classes. Um, when I was teaching AP Calc, I was also teaching Algebra 1 at the same time. So sometimes when you pick up little things from calcs, it's kind of helps out a little bit on the algebra. So let me give you a little history of what happened when I was teaching AP Calc and how I used it to my advantage in algebra. So when I first started teaching, they would give a graph, say something like, say Karen's riding her bike to school or something like that, and they would say y equals f of t. Now, with the fundamental theorem of calculus 2, you end up with two different variables. So they give something like, say, g would be 0 to t f of x dx, and therefore if you go g prime, you would have f of t. So basically saying that g prime is the same thing as f of t. But then questions will arise with, when x was this or t was this, and students would constantly ask me, well, what should I do? Should I use x or t in my answers? And I was like, well, I think you're supposed to use t, I think. And so we went with it. But I think I wasn't the only one having issues with that. So what they did was kind of clever. So what they did instead of this, they would say y equals f. And there went away all those questions of my calc students. And I was thinking, wow, that's pretty neat that they did that to take away that confusion. So I thought, well, why not do that in my Algebra 1 class? So what I did was, let's say, for example, let's say we're chapter 1, let's just throwing out an idea here. I would start off by saying y equals x plus 4, and I would ask the question, find y when x is equal to 2. And obviously, simple here, 6, and therefore you have 2 comma 6 would be your answer. So I waited until they got comfortable by plugging in a numerical value. So then let's say chapter 2 came along. So then hopefully by that you're connecting with, let's say, the graph. And what I started doing then is saying this is y equals f. And so therefore I would go through and I would say, when x is 2, what's my y value? So therefore you have y equals 6, therefore you have 2, 6, and go ahead and find the point, 2 comma 6, and so on. But then I would answer, let's say this is question 1a. On 1b, I would say, do this to them. Y of x equals x plus 4 when x equals 2. And kids would say, well, isn't this the same problem? And I said, yeah, just in terms of how do you use your notation. So here you say y of 2 equals 6, which is 2 comma 6. And then they said, well, which one should I use? I said, either one. But I always say, well, this is the preferred way because that way you don't have to rewrite it. Here you can stop, but if you still want to write it out, you can do it like this. So then I would do things like, let's say 1c. So I would do something like, say, f equals x plus 4 when x equals 2. Therefore, they're saying, well, what's that? Well, it's the same thing. F equals 6. Therefore, my point is 2 comma 6. And then I would then do, let's say question D here, f of x equals x plus 4 when x equals 2. Therefore, f of 2 equals 6. And therefore, I say this is the same thing as your y, because that's the same thing as your graph. And I keep saying y equals f. And therefore, that made that connection. So it was a series of process in terms of, not jumping just directly into it and say, okay, let's start off by f of x. No, I did it by several weeks in terms of getting there. So again, I started doing this right off the bat, plug it in, then y of x, then started doing f and f of x, and then say y equals f of 2 or y equals f of x. So something that I started off in like calc, like I said, easily was able to introduce it in algebra, and it helped out that confusion of trying to get this notation. I have found, like I said, if you just all of a sudden just start off by f of x equals x plus 4, and you start saying that x equals 2, they do have trouble with that. So that's, like I said, it took me a couple years to try to fine tune it, but that's what I started doing. And after my second, third year, very little issues, and the transition was pretty smooth. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but that's it. So hopefully that understands in terms of what I was talking about the other day. I know, like I said, we got stuck on this notation. When did you use it? When we should throw it out? But or throw it out to the students, I should say, not throw it out. But hopefully you can maybe get something